Welcome, everyone, to the Awards Heaven podcast. I'm Tony Ruiz.
I'm Rob Lucuria.
I'm Charlie Bright.
And guess what, folks? The Oscars is over. You'd think we'd have nothing left to talk about, but we do. But I promise this is the last time. And we're going to get to it with one of our favorite people, a first-timer on the podcast, on episode 21, executive editor at Awards Watch, Ryan McQuade. Ryan, go. What do you want to say about this year's Oscars before we dive into some specifics?
Oh my God. I think that's the worst prompt you can do for me, man, because you're going to let me just go and I could keep going for hours. Like I could not stop if I wanted to.
Yeah, but then we'll get Charlie to tell you to shut the fuck up.
That's true. That's true. That's true. He does that every October in Middleburg. No, I just want to say that nothing said here can be used against me in a court of law. And
Recording public opinion is another matter altogether.
But like, that's a block and a mute button just away from me not having to care about any of that. I'm super excited to be here. Thank you guys so much for having me on. You know how much I respect and love you guys and have been listening to this since you guys have started. I'm so excited to be here as we are like the janitor crew and kind of like sweeping up the rest of the Wolfgang Puck's after party. I was listening to Matt Bellamy's show. I was like, he was like talking about like a sushi bar or whatever, there. And I'm like, wow, that's really what I come for content is to hear about the endless sushi at the Oscar parties, which sounds great, but also it's like, who cares? I'm really excited to be here and just, we're a couple days away from this whole thing. I think there's going to be like a really kind of cathartic conversation tonight because it's been very interesting 48 hours, 72 hours after everything happened at the 98th Academy Awards. And I'm just kind of curious where this conversation is going to go. And I promise not to piss off everyone, maybe, with some of the things I have to say, but also not be as congratulatory and patting on the back as I was the night when we recorded our show. Because as Charlie knows this, that I've had the one battle prediction the whole season, even before the season technically like officially started. So
you're also an unapologetic PTA stan as well.
True, like two things can be true. I want my guy to finally get a trophy, and I also saw this as a potential Best Picture, Best Director winner, and I saw like it actually unfold the way that I thought it could. Like Charlie knows this. I did this a couple of years ago with Christopher Nolan and Oppenheimer. I thought that was the right move. Nomadland and Frances McDormand. Like when I call my shots, I really do call my shots. And then there are other years where I'm like, I don't know what the hell is going on. Coda, Power of the Dog, maybe. I don't know. Let's figure it out. So that'll probably be next year. It's just me sitting back and enjoying it. But yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thank you, Tony, Robert, and Charles.
Well, actually, you just kind of queued up one of the things that I wanted to talk about, and that is, this kind of line between punditry and promotion that really, for some reason this year, and especially in the couple of weeks leading up to the Oscars, I think all of us here agree that this was always going to be a sinners and well, actually, let's go back. We could go back, and I think that there was a time where we were thinking like maybe Hamnet could do it, and then as things fell, we started to see this narrative of One Battle and Sinners really kind of solidify. And in probably, I would say, the week leading up to, I would say probably after SAG, that's when it seemed like all hell broke loose. And the thing that has been bothering me, and why I'm so glad that this season is over, is this line between saying, here's this one film that I, as a critic, as a pundit, as a prognosticator, really, really love. Sometimes, and I think social media has a lot to do with this, I feel like that line between doing real hardcore analysis and promotion to the point of advocating sometimes at the loss of a certain amount of objectivity that is required, and that we all struggle with. We all have our blind spots when it comes to films that we love, that we don't, that we really want to see these films win. But I think where some people are falling short is they are losing that objectivity. And so, where have you, what are your guys' thoughts on this? How has this year been any different, do you think? Rob, let's start with you.
Um, Look, I think the one of the issues perhaps is because this it was a very brutally long season. I just felt like by the time you get to mid-March, it's like, really? Are we still fucking talking about this? Can we please get this done and dusted? It would have been great if it was at the end of February, even earlier, because I just think people start losing the plot because we're thinking about it constantly. People are losing sleep over it as, maybe they're not taking your advice, Tony, that you said last time, which was it's just the Oscars. It's not life and death. Everybody chill. It's all good. No one's going to die, hopefully. But people started losing the plot. People started trying to look for things to talk about and to argue about. Film Twitter and the online bubble sometimes maybe is a bit amplified in our world, and it's really that's what happens online is not really what's happening on the ground in Hollywood. But I we are the elephant in the room is that there are some prognosticators, journalists, whatever you want to call them, who have really influential roles in this whole blogosphere community, and we expect more from them. We want to see objective analysis, journalistic integrity, and I am not casting aspersions on anybody, so please don't get me wrong. But I just think sometimes we need to take a chill pill. Not everything has to be about gender or race or ethnicity or whatever. Sometimes it's just about the merit of the film itself. And sometimes it's about what you love and what you don't love. And people in the Academy are just human beings who just love what they love. And just because they voted for one battle after another more so than sinners does not mean that they're perhaps maybe racist or whatever you want to call that. And yeah, so that's a long way of me saying, let's all just take a chill pill, okay? And I had my favorites, and some of my favorites won on Oscar night, and some of them didn't. And I was really disappointed, and then I got over it and moved on with my life. And I think that's where we need to be.
Charlie.
I feel like we always get this kind of thing, and it feels like it's been especially prevalent, I want to say, like the last 5 or 6 years. I kind of feel like there were a lot of people that had that feeling with Parasite, although I really feel like that was a shared cultural moment, which was a wonderful thing to experience. Um, but then you go to like the next year, and I know that there were certain people in the blogosphere who were really championing Promising Young Woman to that degree, and especially Carey Mulligan. Um, we saw this with Barbie at the awards that year, and you had people saying that, oh, Barbie's going to obviously win costume design. I'm like, have you seen Poor Things? Do you even know what you're talking about? Um, they there's always that really fine line, and it would be one thing if you took your position and wrote a separate article saying this is not me prognosticating, this is just me being a fan of this thing, and here's why I think I would like this to happen. um I always feel like in the moment, people will want to also use more. I don't think the word incendiary is the right word, but they'll want to use more like definitive attention grabbing wording of their opinion rather than let's just take a step back. This is what I think. This is what I would like to see happen as a lover of movies. Um, and then you do your actual predictions and say, well, I would like this to happen. this is what I think is actually going to happen. I was like that this year with supporting actor with Sean Penn. I was like this last year with actor because I was beating the drum for Ray Fiennes in Conclave, even though but I wasn't stupid enough to predict him because I knew Adrian Brody was going to win. Um, I really feel like there's just needs what everyone should do is when you make any sort of tweet or article for whatever publication or outlet that you write for, sleep on it for 12 hours. Sleep on it for 12 hours and see how it feels after that, and then publish.
Well, and Ryan, before I go to you, I mean, I just want to posit something. Well, I want to posit two things. Number one, I think that the simplest way, I think in this age of everybody posting all the time and content, I think it's created this avenue for because people have to be constantly posting and constantly getting eyes and driving up traffic that either consciously, but I think sometimes it's actually unconsciously, they are giving into some of that more desire and in the process losing some of that objectivity, which allows some of that incendiary stuff to get through. I miss kind of the old days where, and we still see some of this, but I don't see it as much, where you can literally, as a prognosticator, go, here's what I think will win, here's what I think should win, and why. That to me is totally fine. Where I think it gets lost is when, say, like, this is what should win, and if you vote for anything else, you are X, Y, or Z. Um, for example, those of us that, Ryan, you're a big, PTA stan and a One Battle fan. If Sinners had won Best Picture, I know you well enough that I don't think you would have gone, oh my God, this was highway robbery. I mean, maybe you would have, I don't know. But I certainly don't think you would, uh, you know, post a GIF online of, somebody of a toddler, or Nancy Kerrigan going, why, that sort of thing.
I mean,
Um,
I can answer that for you, Tony. Like
sure.
straight up. Sinners was in my top 10 of the year. Like
Same.
it was my number 7 film of the year. I love
Number
that
I
five.
film.
mean,
Mhm.
yeah,
I
we should be so lucky that we have a top two like that. I said
Amazing
that on Oscar
films.
night. Yeah.
Both
yeah,
amazing.
I totally agree. Those were okay. I mean, you brought me on for honesty. I don't think there was
Yes.
a top 2 in either one of those categories, and I don't think there was for a long time. I've talked to people that were going back to the Gotham Awards. I'm not saying the Gotham Awards matter, but you can get a lot from people in the room.
Mhm.
And our associate editor is Sophia Simonello, who is also a big PTA stan, and also had this prediction with me along that we had this all the way. We were very lockstep this year. But we just knew what this movie could be. When they got to the Gotham Awards, and she was talking to a lot of publicists and reps and awards strategists for these other studios, they all said it's over. And this was in December, like November, December time. Like they were fully aware that there wasn't going to be some late breaking movie. Marty Supreme wasn't going to be that film, and nothing before it was going to break through either. It was One Battle. And that night, if you remember back to the Gothams, there was like it was nominated for the most awards, I believe. And a lot of people were like, hey, what the hell's going on? Like, it hasn't won anything. And then it won Best Picture. And there was a massive sigh of relief in the room that it won because it was like, oh, duh. Like, like, so when we talk about like people online and the expectations for this film and talking about everything that you guys sort of are talking about here, I can tell you this is that it was never really a race because if you look at precursors, if you look at Hollywood, if you look at what critics and what audience have said, it hits every box needed to win Best Picture, Best Director, Best Screenplay. And we just needed to see it hit other categories along the way, like Sean Penn, like editing, to solidify that fully, and we did by the night. Now, back to what you said, Tony.
Before you go on, Ryan,
Yeah,
can I just quickly push back on that? Because I'd love to hear your thoughts on this particular point, and it's this.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I totally get what you're saying, and I agree. I had one battle from the beginning as well, always. But in the last couple of weeks of Oscar voting, or that last bit of Oscar voting, I started to think maybe this is a year like one of those other years, like the Coda year, for example, or whatever, where
Fair.
there's some kind of passion that just bubbles out of nowhere, and we have to maybe take stock of that. And I started thinking, maybe Sinners is stronger than I thought. I mean, that didn't pan out. But what do you think
No,
about, like, sometimes it's not all about stats and math. Sometimes it is
it's not
about
all
the
about
vibe.
that. But usually, Rob, when that happens, like you use the code Empower the Dog for an example, there was a
Hmm.
massive backlash and sort of like this, like, sort of underlined campaign against Power of the Dog. There's
Yeah.
also kind of a discovery on the platform of Coda, even though this is a movie that got nominated for things, it didn't get nominated for the most like Power of the Dog did. And
Mm.
people sort of kind of found it and it made them feel good. And I mean, you watch Coda, even if you don't like it as a winner, I think it's a pretty bad winner. I think it's a fine film. There's no denying that when by the end of that thing, you're like sobbing like a baby. We all did. Like, don't look like we can't lie to ourselves. And so did voters. And then it's like, okay, I can be pretty cold by the end of Power of the Dog and confused, or that movie that made me cry, that, like that made me feel good, right? Like that's what I'm going to vote for. And it plays well in a preferential ballot. One Battle After Another didn't have that. It had a minority of detractors for it, the same amount as that Sinners did. Sinners had a bunch of people that I remember when the film came out, like, they were knocking the cinematography or the script, which is very funny because then they end up winning the Oscars. But
Hmm.
those were complaints about it. Like a lot of people complained about, like, they love the buildup of the first act of Sinners so much, and then the back half when it becomes a vampire film kind of isn't as good as that first half is for them. So,
Mm.
and the same goes for like One Battle. Like some people don't get it, or they have the Perfidia Beverly Hills character was too complex, like too, it rubbed them the wrong way, whatever the case may be. Both movies had plenty of check marks for it and plenty of check marks as if they wanted to against it, but they didn't have enough where like one over the other really pushed them away. And then if you look at it, like, they both were carrying the most critic wins. They were both carrying the most prizes on telecast, the most nominations on telecast. I mean, for God's sakes, like, even though, yes, Sinners won SAG Ensemble and Michael B. Jordan, one Battle After Another broke the nomination record at SAG. You can't forget about things like that. It won PGA the night before the SAG win, which is a much stronger guild win. But I just want to get to Tony's point here, is that about Sinners, which is that I always say that, like, usually most years my favorite things aren't up for Oscars, or don't have a flying chance in hell of winning. So when it does, it's very rare. It's very rare. Like 2 out of the last 3 years, my favorite film has won Best Picture and won all these and swept and done a whole season run. I'm assuming in the next decade I'm gonna have like none, because that's how it's been for a while. It was like for Oppenheimer it was Moonlight, and before that, like, I couldn't even tell you when. And so it's very far in between. But what I will say is, like, if Sinners had pulled the upset, you cannot get mad at history. Like, that would have been historic if Ryan Coogler and Sinners, which is a fantastic, original, bold, populist film that everybody loves and was just as passionate for. You got to be out of your fucking mind to be like, I don't want that to win. Like, I would not, I would be bummed that PTA didn't win
Mm.
director, but he had an Oscar. So, like, at that point, my life's mission of seeing him on that stage is complete. Like, I can go to bed knowing that my favorite filmmaker is now Academy Award winner. And guess what? About 5 minutes after his Oscar was, then Ryan Coogler is now Academy Award winner. And I cried during that speech. I thought that was a
Mhm.
beautiful speech. I thought, Autumn Gerard Arkapaw, which is like, I'm a little bit more critical of the cinematography of Sinners than others. What a beautiful speech. Cougar grabbing, going to run for her kid. Like, how can you not love them? How can you not love
Yeah.
Michael B. Jordan? So, like, Tony, to answer your question, I would not have had any issue with it whatsoever. And here's the other thing. This is the other thing I think that adds to that. Then that would have mean my prediction is wrong. And everybody here could have been like, look at this crazy loon that got all the way to the finish line and couldn't get there. You like fumbled on the 1 yard line, you know? And the thing I would say is, it's like, you know what? I thought I had it, and I thought I was right. And guess what? I wasn't. The passion was clearly with Sinners. It's great wins. On and upwards to next year. I was close, but no cigar. And that's what an adult does in predicting this stuff. You admit when you're wrong, and yes, you get to celebrate a little bit when you're right. Do you gloat? Did I maybe gloat a little too much? Yeah, I probably did. Like if you listen to the Awards Watch podcast, that was recorded on the night of. I was elated that I got this thing right. The next day, I did Christina Yearling Bureau show, and I've done yours, and I'm not in a very like victorious mode because I think in the last 72 hours, there isn't a celebration of these two films nearly as much as there should be. There's the online divide that usually happens, and it's kind of disheartening because and it's kind of funny because it's like some people are discovering PTA for the first time, or they're doubling down on their horrendous opinions on Sinners, and about like why it shouldn't have even been there in the first place. It's like, who gives a shit? Like, these two filmmakers were so respectable to one another from the same team. Like, that's your teammate, like PTA. I remember, when, if you go and look at his best director speech right before he started, he points to one side of the room. He's pointing at Ryan Coogler because they got mad respect for one another, stood up for each other. Like when Joachim Trier won international feature, Chloe Zhao and Ryan Coogler were mentees to him at Sundance many years ago. They stood up and applauded him. Ryan Coogler, when Jesse Buckley won, ran to Chloe Zhao and gave him a hug. This isn't a competition between them. So why the fuck is it a competition between us?
I think that's so spot on. And one of the things that I keep going back to is that I wish more of the pundit class, more of the prognosticating class would remember that the Oscars, and I think PTA really hit it perfectly in one of his speeches where he's like, this is not about who is actually the best.
Oh,
This is
and the
about
best
how
picture
people
speech.
yeah, this is about how people felt in a given moment. When we look back at the history of the Academy Awards, I'd say probably more than half the time, I would actually probably assume like 60 or 70% of the time, the films that go on to quote unquote live forever are not the ones that won the Oscar. I mean, we talk about Network and Taxi Driver just in 1976 alone, for God's sakes. I mean, we talk about Network and Taxi Driver a fuck ton more than we talk about Rocky. Um, so I think that my hope is, and I realize I'm probably hoping against, it's like trying to toss a penny into a tsunami. Um, I don't know that this is going to get any better, but I just feel like I need to put on a t-shirt that says, everyone calm the fuck down. What we
I
are
mean,
doing is having fun, talking about films that we love. And yes, I think it's important to highlight films that we want more people to see. Um, I am thrilled that The Voice of Hind Rajab got recognition because it was my favorite film of the year. Am I heartbroken that it lost international film? No, because Sentimental Value was my number three movie of the year. I don't, it doesn't matter. These films are going to stand the test of time, regardless of whether they win an Oscar or not.
I mean, like, I don't give a shit that F1's in there. Like, F1's a good movie, but like people acting like F1 is like this
People acted
terrible
like it was a crime
film.
against
Yeah,
humanity that it was even
like that we
nominated.
like burned down the whole world because F1 got in there. I think Begonia's the worst film in the lineup, and yet, I I stand alone on that. I know a lot of people love that movie, everybody's different, they've got everybody's got different opinions. I mean, that's the great thing about this is that it's just a subjective thing. And the Academy
Objectivity.
is subjective. Like somebody can see all the films Kirsten Dunst and watch them all and vote on them based off of what she likes. And then other people are voting off by like that if a person shook their hand at a dinner or a Q&A. People are weird. Like this is like the Academy is a weird 10,000 plus fickled, everybody's different. You can't please everybody there. They're human beings. That's the other thing. This is a human exercise. This isn't something like computer generated where like you can just spit it out. And so yeah, I mean like Rob, back to your point, like the Sinners like vibe. That's what everybody was kind of talking about. I think that vibe shift was for Michael B. Jordan, clearly by the end of all of it, and then like the SAG sort of, four carried over, and I feel like that was when everybody during that time was like, okay, these feel like the good four here. These feel like the solid four. We can all feel good walking away, but like, I think if you're a One Battle fan, you walk off away from that night and you go, we've got a movie that, I mean, Tony, that critics and audiences called one of the best films of the decade. If you're and walked away with PTA and some of his craft people and sure Sean Penn won, but what a memorable character and reminding us all how great of an actor he is. And then if you're Sinners, yeah, you didn't win picture and director, and that's it stinks. But every key element of that movie walked away with an Oscar. If you said the scores and the music is the best part of Sinners, Ludwig Göransson won. The cinematography and the way that camera move was steering, I lied to you. Autumn wins. The originality of the screenplay and the vision of Ryan Coogler, he wins screenplay. And then this dual performance from a guy that's one of our next movie stars, and Michael B. Jordan, he wins an Oscar. Nobody can walk away, in my opinion, from this Oscars and be mad unless you're Marty Supreme because you didn't walk away with anything. Unless you're Timothy Chalamet. You know what I mean? And you fumbled that back. That's the only one that really can walk away from this and probably be a little upset, or some of the other films. But I mean, the race also kind of just settles sometimes on two films. Like Oppenheimer had Poor Things. Poor Things are on a shit ton below the line. It happens like that. And it's been kind of happening in recent memory. I mean, like Everything
Yeah.
Everywhere All at Once won a bunch of stuff and All Quiet on the Western Front won all the techs. So, happens like that. There were a ton of movies that year. And listen, Charlie knows I wasn't the one thinking that One Battle, or I mean, Everything Everywhere All at Once should win picture. I thought there were three other films. But at the end of the day, I predicted it to win. It won.
Hmm.
And I moved on with my life. And I saw other
See,
movies. Because guess what? I was at South by Southwest then. And after the Oscars, I was at South by Southwest. I saw movies and I moved on. And sure, people ask me, like, how things, and whatever, about the Oscars. And you talk to them about it. But then I'm like, okay, turn off the phone, watch a new movie. And we all move on.
Yeah, it almost reminds me of the end of the Truman Show, where after all of that, um, and Truman leaves and the TV show is done, and everybody's just kind of like, okay, what do we do now? Well, what
It's
we
the
do
end of
now
Finding
is
Nemo when they're all in their bags in the water, and then the puffer fish, voiced by Brad Garrett, says, "Now what?"
now what? Yeah, yeah. Well, what we do is we tell people who are mad. I want to talk very quickly about Sean Penn's win. Um, and I want to talk more about the fact that people are hysterically losing their minds. The biggest thing that they want to say about Sean Penn's win is that he didn't show up. And to which I say, oh my God, are you new at this? Um, if people would bother to learn their Oscar history, you would know that even though the concept of acting winners not being there is a fairly new thing in recent years. If you actually go back pre 1980, you'd be hard pressed to find a year where all four acting winners were there.
Yeah.
Prior to 1980, it was a regular thing where none of the acting winners were there,
74,
because they
you
were.
had, yeah, 74, you
Yeah, go
had both
ahead.
Ellen Burstyn and Robert De Niro weren't there.
Right, right. I mean, we don't count Peter Finch because he was dead.
I
But
do.
well, yeah. But like, if you go
It's
back to say, like,
inexcusable.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
kidding, by
damn
the
it, he
way.
should
People
not
are
have
gonna
had.
think people are gonna think that I'm terrible. I'm kidding, by the way. It's a
Yes,
joke.
of course. Well,
Good
yeah,
Lord.
because people have no what's that word? Oh, yeah, humor.
His family are
Um,
gonna come after me. You know what I mean? So
yeah. Patty Chayefsky is going to assault you from the grave, um,
exactly.
which would be kind of cool. It would be very verbose.
Coming out
It
of
would
like
be
my
the
Criterion disc, that would be kind of wild, you
That would
know?
be awesome. Yeah, the Criterion disc is just going. "Bah, bah, 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 bah."
What did you say? You
But
know, and just
yeah, Ned Beatty kind. See, we're going down a network rabbit hole.
see,
Um,
this is what happens when you also have me on too.
you're
Yeah.
messing with the cosmic forces of nature, Mr. McQuade. Um, but the fact that people are so angry about that. We shouldn't have given Sean Penn an Oscar because he doesn't even care. And as much as I laughed at Kieran Culkin's little, aside there about he just didn't want to, I'm not sure that helped matters at all. But I
But,
mean, for God's
but like
sakes,
what you were
go ahead,
saying,
Charlie.
Tony, understand Oscar history. The first three times Sean Penn was nominated for an Oscar, he didn't go.
Mm-mm.
And that's why it was actually a bit of it was in 2003 it was kind of up in the air, like would Sean Penn and Mystic River materialize, because they didn't know,
Mhm.
though he did later make it clear that he would be at the Oscars, but he's always someone who's always kind of been dismissive of it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. He's totally been like that. But Tony, on the night I was kind of like bummed that he wasn't there too, and I thought like Kieran Culkin saying that was I was like, oh, okay, of course Kieran Culkin's going to say that because he's got to make now that moment about him, because that's who Kieran Culkin is. Um, but I then also was just when we found out that he was with Zelensky and not there, I
So
kind of
on
think it
brand.
makes I think it kind of makes everyone look kind of like an asshole. Like I think there's just like, it makes Kieran Culkin look like an asshole. It's like, oh, he didn't want to be here. It's like, yeah, because he's with Zelensky and helping him in whatever means necessary during a war. Like it's not like think he's saying there are things more important than putting on a tuxedo and giving a speech. He's leading by example. You're there with a snarky comment. And so like to me, that's why they kind of gave him the award in the first place, because they know the type of person Sean Penn is. They know he's not going to show up. And guess what? He didn't show up to BAFTA and SAG either. And they didn't care. They didn't care about other narratives or somebody getting up there making a speech. Kind of won the thing off of merit, which is a very rare thing you get to see, where he didn't do a lot of campaigning and he didn't kiss a lot of asses and do a lot of conversations. He just played lockjaw,
Yeah, really
and
well.
really well,
And won.
and he won. Like he did a couple of interviews. He did the Golden Globes. They let him smoke in there. Nice of him to do that there. He did the Santa Barbara tribute with Leo and with Benicio, and PTA gave him the award. And then guess what? He went bye because he probably didn't also think he was going to win, And then he kept winning, which is kind of funny. But to go back to even the first topic when talking about this, there's been a lot of interesting stuff that I think people haven't talked about enough in terms of when we talk about the trades and talk about platforms and having this conversation about supporting actor, which was a very tight race. and in particular talking about Delroy Lindo. And I've gone back and watched the clip of Kieran Culkin announcing it, and you see everyone else kind of clapping, and then there's been a lot of people like Delroy Lindo didn't clap. I think Delroy Lindo was shocked. I think Delroy Lindo thought he was going to win.
Yeah.
And I think the thing about it is that I don't think he had a shot to win.
No.
Because of the fact that no one has pulled a Marcia Gay Harden since Marcia Gay Harden, and no one will probably ever pull a Marcia Gay Harden because that's just not how it works. And I think that the thing about it is that it was kind of irresponsible coverage because we know know what this does. People put this, they'll say, "Hey, you're the top." Hope. You're top of this. Exactly. It's false hope. You're at the top of these rankings, these predictions. They're saying you're going to win. You need to do more campaigning, more Q&As, more retrospective screenings, more, receptions and all this different stuff. And they keep chirping it in your ear because the people that have giant platforms are saying it's going to happen, even though they're basing it just off of personal wants and hopes and feelings vibes. And people without actually feeling the room and seeing I had some people that, I said it's the done deal. And one of the people that has a big platform said, it's not a done deal. I'm like, Penn won SAG and BAFTA. That's a done deal.
That's it. We're locked in.
That's as done of a deal as it's ever going to be.
Get. And yeah,
I mean, that's like saying, sorry, Rob, I didn't mean to cut you off, but it's like saying, well, SAG and BAFTA went to Jessie Buckley, so Kate Hudson's still going to win. Like, get the fuck out of here. Like, that's not going to happen. She knew she wasn't going to win. And I felt bad for Delroy Lindo because it's a false hope. It's like Charlie's going to be like, you really went here. It's like the Democratic Party to minorities. It's like lying to them. And I was like, good Lord, it's like Chuck Schumer told him he was going to win supporting actor. It's like the constant lie and the feeling of an entire system that is telling you something's going to happen and it's your time and everything, only for Lucy to pull the football. And I felt bad for him because he clearly looked like, oh shit, I was lied to. And I feel bad for him. I really
made him look bad too, as well. And no disrespect to Delroy Lindo, because I was very happy that he was nominated. He should have been.
I don't think so. I actually got a massive sympathy for him. I
just personally, from my perspective, it made him, maybe because we only saw the very short clip of him not clapping and being cranky. He was probably very disappointed, but it made him look a little just arrogant and entitled. And he probably wasn't feeling that way, but it's not a good optics. And the whole thing just stinks. And people saying Delroy's going to win. On what basis? Like, please stop it.
I had Delroy at number 2, but I said during our predictions podcast, it would be irresponsible for me to not predict Sean Penn based on what's happened.
Yeah.
And so, I felt like there was a possibility for it, but I had to always temper that by saying, that is not what I actually think is most likely to happen.
Yeah. And I also just don't think that, I know people were saying, he had the SAG speech and he had the Critics' Choice speech and for the ensembles. He was very shaky during those. One of them, the SAG speech was impactful.
I found myself after SAG saying, I wish he had maybe written something down for it, because it kind of reminded me of when Forrest Whitaker won the Golden Globe and he was just all over the place.
Yeah. I mean, he said that there was supposed to be something on the teleprompter, which then kind of makes me think
actually that only happens when you win.
That doesn't happen. So award. I mean, if there was something on the teleprompter, then that kind of means that they're like, okay, was the fix in? You know what I mean? But again, setting him up to fail. You know what I mean? Also felt bad for Francine Maisler. She lost that Oscar. They kept dragging her up there all season long with the ensemble awards and even at the Globes for the box office award, win, which, by the way, now I get to say this. 3 years in a row, the Box Office Achievement Award at the Golden Globes has not gone on to win Best Picture. So we should probably use that, I think, as a precursor to tell about the severity of what a film is, because Barbie, Wicked, and now Sinners have won that 3 years in a row. And those have been the films that have had massive fan bases that want something to happen, but unfortunately was not what the Academy was picking up as a cup of tea that day. It was very interesting kind of trend there, you know?
Yeah. So, and I also want to just very briefly, because to me, I said, Charlie and I both agreed on this podcast that, it was early in the season, that Amy Madigan was going to go all the way. Now,
Yeah.
the one thing that gave me pause was when she didn't get nominated at BAFTA. However, what I heard, what people kept saying to me, uh, was that, yeah, but her film is not popular. Her film didn't get any other nominations. And then I thought about that for about 2 seconds, and then I did about 45 seconds of Googling. And in the history of the Oscars, there are 30 different actors that have won Oscars, acting Oscars, when they were the only nomination from their film. This is not an unheard of.
What a surprise.
This has happened a full third of the time. So everybody,
God.
do we think that this, looking back with the benefit of hindsight, do we all think that Amy Madigan really was the front runner from the beginning?
No, I don't. I actually don't. I'll
I
tell you
don't
what.
know about that.
I'll tell you, this is how I feel about it. Like, I think it was still close because Wunmi Mosaku did win the BAFTA. Yes, she's British. Yes, I get a hometown advantage, but it still helped her. And Teyana Taylor was the front runner for quite a while in the beginning of the Oscar season. Amy Madigan was always in the conversation, but many of us, quite rightly, were worried that a horror performance in a film that maybe a lot of the steak eaters, Anne Thompson hat tip, won't really go for is going to hurt her. And I think that is a very rational, reasonable argument to make. However, as the season rolled on and then she won the SAG, for me, it was like, this is pretty much locked in now, because as we know, over the last 15 years, 14 SAG winners in Best Supporting Actress went on to win the Oscar, apart from Regina King, who wasn't nominated at SAG, and that's why Emily Blunt won for A Quiet Place, because they love her in SAG-AFTRA. So that in itself was like, this is really not as close as we thought it was originally, because we started to have hope and maybe even realized Oscar voters are younger now, they're more international, they're more diverse, and they will go for a film like Weapons, maybe only once, but that whole narrative ended up falling away. I just don't think it was necessarily a locked in front runner from the beginning. I don't think so.
Charlie?
What?
Charlie?
Well, I have nothing else to say on that. I mean, I think you pretty much.
Charlie's like, I was right, and all of you shut up.
I wasn't right. I wasn't right. I did not. My apprehensions. I didn't predict her.
I predicted her.
Yeah.
I had a feeling that she could, because that character is so damn popular. I mean, when you got people dressing up as you for Halloween, like, yeah. I mean, there were people dressing up as Smoke and Stack. There were people dressing up as Bob Ferguson, but there were a lot of people dressing up as Aunt Gladys. That was the character of the year. And when you look at the nominations, she was the most popular character of the 20 people nominated this year, like, easily. And yeah, I mean, it is troubling, because we all kind of, to your point, Tony, like, we hadn't seen this happen in, what was it? We hadn't seen it happen since Vicky Cristina Barcelona, right? In the category for Penelope Cruz. And I think it's because we've seen, like, you can have 2 nominations, maybe 3 nominations, and it gets you there, like, with a makeup package or, or a screenplay nomination or something to help you along the way. And I think a lot of us then at that point, including myself, were were weary, even though I kind of early on was like, that kind of feels right. Like, because she's a former nominee, she's playing a very popular character. It's such a memorable character. Yeah, it's in a horror movie, but it's in I think, a very intelligent horror movie for Oscar voters to also really dive into its themes. And it's kind of like a rediscovery because of a 40-year gap in between the nominations. And so, like, when she won Critics' Choice, I was like, oh, here we go. And then Tiana won the Globe, and then I was like, okay, maybe this is the course correction, because these were the two that were the ones that got the most critics wins, Tiana Taylor and Amy Madigan. And I want to give it. I've been giving this credit to Next Best Picture, and I really want to give them their props here, because Matt and his team, they've looked at, they said something that's actually very true when I looked into it, was that in the last like 10 years, 12 years, that we've had these more expanded critics groups, in the phase one, the 1-2 in a lot of those critics prizes are the ones that we're talking about for the ones two that ultimately end up winning the Oscar. And that was Tiana Taylor and Amy Madigan. And Madigan sort of surged at the end, and she won some big critics groups. And I just thought Wumi Musaka was always a hometown BAFTA thing. Like, I really did, you know. And then I think, yeah, Rob's point of 14 out of 15 at SAG was big, but then the opposite of Delroy Lindo happened. She gave a freaking killer speech. It was so funny, and talking about like the SAG award being like a Ken doll and looking at its private parts and like, what has it got down there? Like, I think people kind of got like a little Olivia Colman kind of, momentum there of like, I want to see
it was a
this.
very hometown it was a very
Yeah.
hometown
Homey,
speech.
yeah.
It was very
It was a
much like,
very also I'm a
I think
union
the
girl.
voters were like, I want to see that again up on an Oscar stage. I want to see
Yeah.
this level of kooky, fun, type of, speech again. And I think that kind of put her a little bit over the top. I do think Rob's right. I think it was close because Sinners in One Battle were so popular.
Yeah.
But I think she's going up there, and she's married to Ed Harris, and she's all over the place, and she's got little thoughts here and there. It was like, how do you not love her? At that
Yeah.
point, like, how do
Highlight
she's
of the
running
whole
on the
thing.
stage like the kids at
Oh
SAG,
my
like,
God.
freaking forget it, man. It was over after that. I
So
was like,
happy.
good for her.
That's
You
going to
know,
age really well. That win is going to age very well
it
because
really
it's
is.
such a classic. It's such a zeitgeist moment, and it's the highlight of my whole Oscar season for me is her winning that Oscar. Thank God. And
I
nominations, but
know.
thank God.
And then last but not least, I want to just kind of put a pin in the Chalamet of it all. I want to because
Where do you want to put
I
the pin,
want.
Tony?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Mm.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing. The whole this goes. There's kind of a through line to this about how does the front runner become the front runner. And again, was Chalamet? I realize Chalamet won. He won the Globe, and he won Critics' Choice. I don't think he was the majority winner of the acting prizes at the critics groups. Um, was the front runner narrative real or imagined with him? Because I can't believe that it was just like his overall quote unquote behavior that cost him this. I wonder if Marty Supreme. I don't know. I have so many weird jumbled thoughts, and it's hard to express them. Charlie, you go first with this one. What are your thoughts on the Chalamet?
I mean, I kind of think that I think he started out the front runner, but I think people were. I think maybe he starts out the front runner, but people were open to the idea of someone else possibly. And then you also have people that just don't like him. I think there are people who that Chalamet rubs them the wrong way. And I and so I think these are people that were looking for any reason, too. And also the fact that the way he approached this campaign was so weird and had so many off-putting moments that I think that it was just easy for, someone else to come in and take that momentum. And yeah, and I think it also the fact that it's a Safdie brothers, or it's Josh Safdie, and his and characters that are affiliated that come from him are very hard to root for. Um, so yeah, I just think that it's just something that just there was always an openness for people to say maybe not this, and also like calling him, and anyone calls him overdue at this point, I just want to say get the fuck out of here, because Michael B. Jordan has been putting in the work for decades, and well, Chalamet's been acting for a while too, but he's nowhere near what I would say constitutes being called overdue. He's only 30, for Christ's sake.
Rob.
So yeah, I always this is like there should be a course at university where we can study how these narratives form, and in the past we can look at how things have changed because I'm actually a really big fan of Timothy Chalamet. I think he's a really, really solid, excellent actor. I don't care about all the
As do
stuff
I.
that he does. Yeah, I think we all can acknowledge that he's a fine actor. He's been in so many Best Picture nominated films. He's so wonderful in Dune Part Two, and hopefully the third one. And I never really thought he was the front runner, but I figured that he was a strong contender because Mighty Supreme was also a pretty strong contender across the board. And so he had that film had support below the line and obviously amongst his fellow actors. But the issue for him perhaps was not the stupid shit that he was saying that might have annoyed people. I think for me, what happened was he won the SAG last year, and so we as a group acknowledged a few weeks ago that he's probably not going to win it again in 2 years in a row. That's probably a bridge too far for a lot of people, for someone so young, and perhaps maybe there's a bit of envy there amongst his cohort and peers. And so because he lost the SAG and Michael B. Jordan was on the ascendancy for a film that was really beloved, probably more so than Mighty Supreme, it just was like everything, all the stars aligned for Michael B. Jordan at the expense of Timothy Chalamet, and of course, I think Leonardo DiCaprio. If I had a choice, I would have probably voted for Wagner Moura, but second, I would have voted for Leonardo DiCaprio. It was such a strong category. Any of those guys could have won easily. So that's where I'm at. Because he lost the SAG, Michael B. Jordan was right there. It helped at that point while the Oscar voters were voting, and I think that kind of tipped it over the edge. I don't think it has anything to do with opera and ballet. That's dumb. It's just, yeah, and I just feel like he was never truly the out and out front runner anyway. He was just a strong contender. That's where I'm at.
Ryan.
I'm a little bit with Robert and Charlie here, but I do think he was the front runner. There's no denying that he was. Um, I think from that moment he lost to Adrian Brody and we knew this movie was coming, he was the front runner. I think the SAG speech, though, last year rubbed people the wrong way. And they don't they like athletes to say how great they are. They don't like artists to say how great they are. There's just sort of an arrogance being that young that older voters and people like myself, like if you're going up there and having to say, I want to be one of the greats, and he says all these Daniel Day-Lewis and Viola Davis. Daniel Day-Lewis isn't going around saying like, hey, I'm the greatest of all time, put up or shut up. Like that's one of like the most eloquent, respectable people ever to grace the screen, does his work his way, collects awards, and goes home and cobbles shit until somebody tells him, hey, let's make another movie. Leo doesn't call himself the greatest of all time, someone that he sort of markets himself after. Sure, Leo has his own off the screen shenanigans with models and is an environmentalist and all this other things. But when you hear Scorsese and PTA talk about Leo, he is a consummate like producer and creative force that is very professional and people love working with. And I'm not saying that people don't love working with Chalamet, but there is something about like he's barely 30 years old. He's dating a Kardashian. I'm not saying that that's a pro or con against him, but when he started calling
I am
her his partner, and there was the whole lead up to Marty Supreme where he was leaning into the character persona of Marty Mauser and calling himself the Click Commander and going on top of the Sphere and having all these pop-up events. And it really deflated also the New York screening where it was so popular and they held the reviews for such a long time. A24 actually kind of didn't help him a lot either in building that up of like, this is an undeniable winning performance of da-da-da-da. And then, I think that fatigue set in. I think that it's okay to say that. Like, I think that happened with Leo young in his age when he had The Aviator and Catch Me If You Can and The Departed and Blood Diamond. Like, we were like, can you please stop making successful movies? Because we're going to nominate you and we're just fucking tired of it. And that's just what they did with Leo. He made successful performance, successful movies, worked with the biggest filmmakers on the planet. And even then they said, you're going to need to crawl in like a fucking bear and get, destroyed and go to the frickin' snow up at the, southern tip of the planet to win your Oscar. And you're going to be 40-ish and win it. And they make guys like him wait. And I know you're going to say, well, Michael B. Jordan's, he's still a young guy. He's 40. And they think of him as an adult. And I've said from the beginning of this season, and I predicted Leo. I thought Leo would carry kind of like how, Best Picture films have this year. So see, I was wrong about something, and that's okay.
It happens from time to time,
I'm not perfect. No,
nah.
No one is. But I said on the Movie Draft podcast with Ethan Simi, I said, they're not going to give it to Chalamet. They're going to give it to an adult. Mm-hmm. And his actions spoke. And if you read Kyle Buchanan's piece about why it didn't happen, he didn't go to the Governor's Awards. He went to a lot of screenings. And there were a lot of people resentful at the fact that a 30-year-old at the American Cinematheque is getting a career retrospective. There was a lot of the fact that he showed up at the class photo super late and didn't talk to a lot of people. And Leo can do that because he's already won one and he's Leonardo fucking DiCaprio. You know what I mean? Like, he didn't even have to show up if he didn't want to. He didn't show up to SAG, because he's filming a movie with Marty. And so everybody works on a different set of rules. To Charlie's point, if anybody's overdue, which I totally agree with Charlie, if anyone says that Chalamet is overdue, they're fucking crazy. Because Ethan Hawke was in the same category and has been nominated multiple times and delivered a fantastic performance. And he's overdue to frickin' win one. He's been in the industry for 40-something years. Might even be 50 years at this point, because he was a kid when we first saw him. So let's not talk about like overdue narratives for this, young spry on his third nomination, for God's sakes. He's going to have plenty more bites at the apple. And he doesn't need the Oscar to prove himself. He's the movie star of the time. Like, he's going to have Dune 3. He'll make whatever project he has afterwards. I'm sure dozens of filmmakers want to work with him. Dozens of his peers want to work with him. But he still needs to grow the fuck up. And, like, that's okay to say. Like, and the Academy does this to men more than they do to women, which is actually kind of like, when you really think about it, you're like, wow, they make men wait. But they, when they see, an actress like Mikey Madison, for example. They gave that award to her, and they said, "Fuck you, Demi Moore. We don't need to give you that. Like, you have striptease and Bruce Willis. You're fine. You know what I mean? Like, we don't need any of that for you. We don't need Fernando Torres to have it. We want to give it to Mikey Madison. We gave it to Jennifer Lawrence a decade before, and we banked on her being a movie star, and she is one. And they do that for women. They don't do that for men. And so, yeah, I think he
Yeah.
was a front runner. But then also, like, look at Michael B. Jordan. Like, that's one of the sexiest men alive. And he's so humble and he's so nice. And it's like, and he's part of one
He
of these
goes in
films
and
that are
out.
very, yeah, well, that kind of felt a little staged, to be honest. Like, they had the photos and everything ready to go.
Yeah.
But he's also like in a movie that's more popular than Marty Supreme. And if you want to get all statistical and Oscar-y about it, it's very rare that it's very rare over the last 20 years. It's like a couple of cases. There was like a 3-year stretch where this happened. But for the most part, best actor or lead actress, or mostly best actor winners, they carry a supporting performance with them. And when Odessa
Right.
Zion or, Gwyneth Paltrow or Charlie's favorite, Mr. Wonderful, didn't get nominated, there was that kind of hurts you a little bit there. And I think BAFTA was the real tell that they were willing to go with a movie from their own place and not give it any awards whatsoever, and instead of anointing Chalamet. And I do think that, like, yeah, his switch from being a dick on the press tour to being Mr. Humble at the Globes and the Critics' Choice was like, I think people are like, oh, this guy's a phony fuck. You know what I mean? And I think
Yeah.
he's a great actor. I think you got to sell your movie the way you got to sell it. And he did. And that movie made $200 million. Good for him. But I think that voters were just like, they were tired of his ass. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, and let me
And they
just
showed
kind
it.
of put a cap on all of this. Um, I was definitely, I'll be totally honest here. I don't care. I was bugged by Chalamet's comments, the ballet and opera comments. They did bug me. Um, and I think Ryan has touched on exactly why they bugged me. It's not that he was shitting on ballet and opera, and it's not just because I particularly love opera. It's like one of the dearest things to my heart. It's because of the flippantness of it, the punching down on institutions that are already, if you read anything about, the arts, particularly in the United States, where, we are one of the few industrialized countries that does not subsidize our artistic institutions, the way that they are struggling, it seemed unnecessary and it seemed like it was punching down. And I think it's not a sign of cruelty or a sign of I think it's a sign of a lack of maturity. And I think artists, whether you're an actor or a musician or a dancer or a singer, I think that artists don't like it when you punch down on other artists. And that's why it bothered me. But ultimately, I agree with you. I think Chalamet is a fantastic actor, and I hope he is going to get his Oscar one day. And if it's for something worthy, I mean, let's face facts. A lot of people who get career Oscars don't get it for something that's necessarily that worthy. But
Sensible woman.
I will. And I will be thrilled to see it. But I hope he takes stock, and I hope he learns from this. Rob, final Oscar thoughts.
Final Oscar thoughts. Okay, I think I may be in the minority on this particular point, but I really loved this Oscars. I loved the ceremony. I know it dragged. I know there were issues. I know the playing off winners is very annoying, and I hope, for the love of God, please make that stop. Get rid of the stupid banter and put that time onto the winners. These people, right, have worked so hard with their, on their passion projects, and they win an Oscar. It's the pinnacle of their career, maybe of their life. Can you just let them fucking talk? and cry and and say silly things and point at the crowd and laugh. Like that's what we want. Okay. So that's the one thing I didn't like. But I loved the ceremony. I thought the in memoriam was amazing. I loved the most of the winners. Amy Madigan in particular. I love horror. I love the as a genre. I'm still not over Toni Collette not being nominated for Hereditary. I feel like this helps that craziness in my brain. Yeah, I really loved it, and I'm gonna kind of miss it. Although I'm also happy that it's over.
Charlie.
I'm gonna go out on a limb on something here because because a couple weeks ago I went on a rant about um uh politics in the arts. And I've been reading a lot of pieces about criticizing Paul Thomas Anderson for not saying anything more blatantly political in any of his three speeches. The closest he got was his screenplay win. He talked about how he wrote this movie for his kids because of the shit planet that we're leaving for them. Um, I I'm of two kind of minds because I scolded people who were not who were trying to digress away from politics, and it. But also, while politics is for PTA's movie is a frame for that movie, it is not what it is about. It is about the search for his daughter. It is about this person. It is about Lockjaw trying to neutralize the thing that may get him into this white supremacist organization. Uh, the politics of that are but I don't know how I feel about this, but also I as much as I criticize other people for staying away from trying to get away from it, I'm also just like, let the man have his night. Let him have his night. Let the Can we just be happy for this? I mean, I I feel so, and that's basically also but I'm with Rob. I for the most part, this was in terms of the winners, this is one of the best Oscars I've seen in recent years. Um, there's no one that made me infuriated to the way that Renee Zellweger made me infuriated with Judy. I because I'll always find a way to
I knew
shit
that
on
was
that win.
coming. I
I'll
knew that was
always find a
coming.
way. But I mean, the one that I would do that for would be two people exchanging saliva, but I can't be angry because the singers won, and that was the best one in there for
That's
me.
right.
That's what I love. I got to say about it. It was a tie. The best and the worst film won. Uh, you know, so and as I've said it before, we should be so lucky that we've. I actually think that a lot of these recent years have been spectacular for film. I know some people say that last year wasn't that great. I thought last year was fantastic. I thought Honora, Conclave, um, why am I blanking on the
Amelia
ones that were
Perez
there?
was your favorite.
I actually dug Amelia Perez. I dug that movie. I thought I actually lived with that movie. I loved
Oh,
it.
it was in the Brutalist.
Oh, that was my
That
fave.
okay. Fuck off on that. But
That was my fave.
I
I
knew
love
that
that
was
movie.
coming.
Mine too, Rob.
And then
Mine
the
too.
year before,
Hmm.
you have like Zone of Interest, Anatomy of a Fall, Oppenheimer, Barbie. I mean, I really have
Killers of
been
the Flower
loving.
Moon. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
I've been and Poor Things. I've been loving these and I think these best picture lineups. I love that we have 10 because I really feel like it really shows true breadth of the depth that we've been getting in recent years of film. And I really do love the name of this academy because it's been willing to go to some very interesting places. So I mean, I can't wait to see what bubbles up at Cannes in a couple months because
Yeah.
that's what's really been interesting is that the Cannes Film Festival is in a place now as a launcher the way it hasn't been. I want to say prior to the expansion of the academy. This
Mhm.
and it's been a really great place to see potential contenders come to be. So I'm excited for next year. I'm glad this year's over. let's try to get mid to late February at because we don't want it to be like the Parasite year where it was one week it was the Golden Globes, the next weekend was Critics'
Yeah,
Choice, the next weekend was SAG and DGA, and then the next week was the Oscars. That was unbearable.
so true.
Ryan, final Oscar thoughts.
Oh, I agree. I think that they should be a little bit earlier. I think late February is perfect. Once the Super Bowls happen, anytime after that, just start putting it in there. I don't give a shit when. Move them all up. Like, just. I mean, even last weekend, like it could have been the weekend before. Like on nothing was going on. I get the Olympics was going on, but there were like 3 weeks after the Olympics, and we're just like, oh my god, hurry it up. Um, I I agree. Like I think that the collection of winners here are fantastic. I mean, we talked about the Sinners ones. We talked about the one battle ones. The K-pop Demon Hunter double win was great. I think the tech wins for Frankenstein are very earned. Like you can say a lot about that film all you want, but like technically speaking, it's a brilliant film, and it won exactly what it should. The sound for F1 is great because cars go vroom vroom.
They do.
Um, you know, uh, Avatar winning because why not? Because no one else can take the challenge in visual effects away from Big Jim. I thought the shorts were great. I mean, like again, like to Charlie's point, you can't get mad at the shorts if they broke your bracket or not because history happened. Like seven tie in Oscar history. Like, come on, like that's an unexpected thing you can't predict or have to justify in an op-ed piece.
And it's
But
cool
I
when it
think that
happens.
it's cool
Mm.
because you never know when it's going to happen. It can happen in an acting category or in sound. You never know. You never know. And I would, I think that, you know, we're not going to know how, like, I think it was Tony that said this. We're not going to know the extent of what these two films, Sinners and One Battle, his legacy is going to be because that's not defined for at least a decade, if not 2 decades. You never know what's going to be the one that sticks. I do think that these movies will be around in the culture a lot because, Sinners is such a monumental achievement for original filmmaking and Ryan Coogler and black storytelling and the African American experience and music and all these different things. There's no way you cannot see that like this man knows how to make cultural moments, much like his mentor Christopher Nolan. And then you have Paul Thomas Anderson, who is at his 10th film and said, "You know what, Tarantino, I can make a 10th film and it be one of my best. Fuck you, and I can win all these Oscars. It can be done." And the man is one of the most respected filmmakers of any era, and certainly of his generation. And it's going to be fascinating to see what both of these guys do. Hopefully, Coogler doesn't keep doing Marvel films. He does more original stuff like this. And, for Anderson, he can do whatever. But as far as how we cover this, I mean, you guys do a great job. I feel like we try to do the best we can at Awards Watch as well. I think that we should all, though, in the new year, make a deal that, like, if we see opinions that we don't agree with, and we see just blasphemy happening, to not call it out, not to be snooty, to not be combative in any way. Don't give it the time of day, because there is going to be now. Because I know who can predict this, and Rob mentioned it. Like I think Ann Thompson and Pete Hammond, who have been around a long time, they still know what they're talking about. Scott Feinberg, he knows what he's talking about. I think Eric does. I think there's a ton of people. It's becoming bigger and bigger how many people are talking about the Oscars. Some know what they're talking about, some don't. And that goes at big publications, and that goes for random people on Twitter. And so I think that, or X, or however the fuck you want to call it. So I think the best thing
And
to
YouTube.
do is to do what you should do when trying to find fact-based evidence versus watching something like on Fox News. I think you should evaluate the information. see which one is acting like a crazy loon like Tucker Carlson, and ignore that. And because there is no helping that person or persons, those people are going to say and do whatever they need to justify their irrational thoughts that someone told them in the middle of the night in the dark alley. And you just gotta, have to accept that, like, they are not gonna change, but you have the capacity to just ignore it and say they don't matter. All this other people that are doing it right matter, and you are doing it right, and trust yourself. And guess what? Back to Tony's original point from last week or the week before. If all that fails, then fuck it. Just predict whatever you feel is right and have fucking fun with this. It shouldn't be about like looking at somebody and saying nasty personal comments, about anything. It should just be about like having some integrity and having some self-discipline and saying, you know what? I got it right. I got it wrong. Doesn't matter because we're all friends here. At the end of the day, we're going to keep talking about dumb shit and these films and poking fun at one another and having a good time doing it. And I think everybody online should do the same thing. If you're just discovering Paul Thomas Anderson and because you're mad about Sinners, maybe go watch some of his other films. If you're tired of all the Sinners peoples, maybe listen to what they have to say and then go watch Sinners again, or go watch another one of Ryan Coogler's films, or maybe go watch more black or African American cinema. Maybe that's something that you should do. Meet people in the middle instead of dividing, because Lord knows we've got an fucking asshole that runs this country that already divides us enough. This is supposed to be a fun escape for us. We don't need to turn it into red and blue. We don't need to do that. We need to just, this is a subjective art form. Let's have fun with it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. It's the whole point. Otherwise,
Charlie, were you going to say something?
I was going to say, when you brought up Fox News, I want to start a conspiracy theory that Dominion voting machines were used last year, and that's how Adrian Brody won. Because it was so.
Do you know that speech is still going on? Right now. And what's crazy? Thank God, by the way, we didn't have YouTube during the Brody speech, because they would have never cut him off, because I don't think YouTube's going to have a time limit. Imagine
they're not.
Mercifully.
Imagine the novel he would have read up on that stage. Just putting that
still
out.
Be going.
It was the best of times. It was the worst of times.
It was the Brody.
It was brutal. It wasn't brutal.
It was brutal, and it was ist.
Yeah. Love you. Anyway, let's move on.
So, this week, speaking of being the Oscar nerds that we are, let's have the nerdiest top 5 ever to close out this year's Oscars. And that is the top 5 Oscar moments that Oscar nerds like us always go back and revisit. And thank you, YouTube. You are not a sponsor of this podcast, but, we'll take your money.
One day. One day.
One day.
And so let's talk about the top 5 Oscar moments that we consistently go back to and revisit. And I will admit that this was a fun list to put together for me. So I'm really excited to see what people come up with. Ryan, you are our guest. Why don't you go first? What is your number 5?
Oh, man. Well, my number 5... my number 5 is kind of a cheat, because it's a concept that they've done on the show, and they did it again this year. And I gotta tell you guys, I'm so giddy when the Oscars celebrate itself and they're aware of the movies, but in particular when they celebrate the history of the Academy and understand the moment and understand that, like, hey, this is a big fucking deal.
Yeah.
So anytime they bring out the Fab Five and do the Fab Five format, those are consistently some of my favorite ever. Now, You could go back to the first year they did that. I think that was like '08,
Oh
right?
wait.
When they did it, and those were great. I'll never forget Kevin Kline talking about Heath Ledger. And I thought that that was just very heart wrenching and beautiful. But I think my favorite of them was actually a couple of years ago when Cillian Murphy won. And I thought that five of actors were so great at talking individually, like Nick Cage talking about Paul Giamatti was so hilarious. McConaughey talking about Bradley Cooper, Forrest Whitaker talking about Coleman Domingo. Uh, Unfortunately, Brendan Fraser talking about Jeffrey Wright, and then to cap it all off, this just like elegant speech by Ben Kingsley about Cillian Murphy. And I think that, like, I mean, they did it on the telecast this weekend for the casting award, which I had no one said that they were going to do that, and it was great because they had a member of each of the cast go up and talk about the casting directors. Anytime they do that, even though, like, yeah, it's an easy thing to ask five people to come to a fucking stage and talk about, like, these other performances. I don't know. It's kind of magical, and it means that we get to celebrate the award. Now they should still do clips with with this as well,
Mhm.
maybe leading before they walk on stage. But the Fab Five videos are like the ones that I would highlight, but particularly the Cillian Murphy one a couple years ago. I thought that was probably one of the best ones that they've ever had.
Charlie.
My number five is so I know we did our favorite speeches, and this is one that I love. And it's just one because it's just such a great moment. And it was when it was 2010 when God of Love won the live action short award, and Luke Matheny, the a writer, director, and star of it, got up on stage, and he was a kid. He was a kid. He was in his like mid-20s. He had this big bushy hair, and of course, the first thing he says was, "Oh, I should have gotten a haircut," which just automatically
We
endeared
all feel
him
that way.
to the entire audience. And then thanking. His home state of Delaware, which I didn't know Delaware existed before that.
No.
Um, and did you?
Mm-mm.
But
I still think you're
also, I love what
lying.
he
It
thanked.
doesn't exist. Yeah.
I don't know what that
It's a
is.
state of mind.
Yeah.
Um, and I love that he thanked his mom for providing craft services. I think it's one of those great, like, dreams. It's important to have dreams because you never know when they might come true. And for that, that was just such a wonderfully beautiful moment. I absolutely adore it.
Rob.
Wow, that was a deep cut. I love Charlie's deep cuts. Firstly, this was very challenging for me because I have 15 and I've had to whittle them down to five. So best believe I will be giving you some honorable mentions later. But you know what? I'm gonna reenact my fifth favorite moment. So just imagine that I'm an older legendary actress, which I'm sure you do with me sometimes. And she's got the envelope. This is in the before times, right before the whole fucking world fell apart. And she does this. Parasite. That fucking moment when Parasite won Best Picture was, I mean, I just don't really have the words because it meant so much to me. I've watched it 50,000 times and it not only was it a great moment for TV, not only what you could see that it really hit really hard in the room, and how significant it was for international film, generally speaking. But it was just a really cool reminder for all those people out there that like to shit on the Academy Awards, that the Oscars mean something. And what Ryan said before, I really agree. Like when they do really cool stuff like that, where they honor cinema, the art of cinema, and the way in which film brings us together as a world, particularly in this day and age when the whole world feels like it's on fire. That means the world to me. I was so profoundly moved when Parasite won. The whole speech, the commotion and chaos in that room, unforgettable.
And Rob, you and
Um,
Jane Fonda have the same cosmetic surgeon, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yeah, I know.
Okay,
I
that's
feel like he did me dirty. Like I feel like she looks way better than I do. But thank you for raising that. Yeah,
and that's why you put her at number 5 because it's like if
correct.
he would have done a better job, it probably would have been
It
higher.
would
I
have been
get it.
higher. And by the way,
I
I
get
feel like we're
it.
going to have some overlaps here. I'm not sure, but anyway, go ahead.
my number five um, is Anthony Hopkins winning for The Silence of the Lambs, and I'll tell you why. I was, let's see, 13 years old and just really starting to understand the concept of the Academy Awards and what they meant. My parents had gotten me a CD-ROM
Wow.
um,
We
of
are
this
old.
thing. We are old, and I was reading these things, these clips about movies, and that's I was, and I just remember like every time I'd watched the Oscars, which had maybe been the 2 years prior, and realized I was watching an award show. They were very dignified and very, oh, people in tuxedos and blah blah blah, blah, blah. And this was my first memory of an Oscar standing ovation. Um, and people just going nuts. And Anthony Hopkins with his, raising his arm triumphantly and winning, and then realizing that, oh, yeah, actors sometimes change their voices when they are on screen versus how they talk in real life. I was like, oh, that's what Hannibal Lecter really sounds like? That's interesting. It was just, for some reason, it was this thing that, I mean, I remember every aspect of that Oscar presentation. I remember what clips they played. I remember the inflection of the way Kathy Bates said it. And it was just, I sort of feel like it's kind of like my Rosetta Stone of being like an Oscars person. And so that's my number five. Ryan, you're number four.
My number 4 is I remember this so vividly growing up. Um, and you're gonna have to remind me. I think it was 2001 when the animated category was first brought onto the
2001.
telecast, right?
Yeah.
Um, because I had just assumed that like animated films were already like considered nominated or whatnot. Like, and my dad telling me about like, no, this is a new category. They've never done this before. You know what I mean? It's always like special honors, like Snow White got special honors or whatever. And so when they had like the pre-taped animated characters in the seats and whatnot, I was just kind of like, this is great. Like adding another category and yeah, it went to Shrek. You know what I mean? Which is a film like I think at the time I was probably going to tell you was like the greatest movie ever made because I saw it like 4 times in theaters as a kid, and I just like there's something about that memory to me and that and Nathan and it was Nathan Lane I think that gave the award out and it was just like now when they make new categories or like when they took the sound categories and put them as one or when they added casting this year or when they announced the stunt categories or whatever, it reminds me of just like when I was a kid and I really started getting invested and they added this category and it was like this brand new thing that it almost felt like you guys made this for me because I'm a kid and so this is my category, so screw y'all. And then the next year I had to be like, what's Spirited Away? A couple of years later, I'm like, and so it then led to discovering outside of just Hollywood films as well. And so I always go back to that because that one's kind of the like nostalgia for me when I was a kid to see the creation of a new category, no matter if like, and I believe animated movies are cinema, just like Guillermo del Toro. And if you don't, well, I have a pamphlet for you, sir.
Mhm.
I forget. Is it Rob or Charlie next? I forgot my own
Charlie.
order.
It's Charlie.
Charlie.
It's me.
Mm.
Um,
It's
my number four is, you know, comedic bits at the Oscars can either be great or they can land with a thud. I'm looking at you, Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans. But one of the ones that worked so well was 2018 Best Costume Design when Melissa McCarthy and Brian Tyree Henry came out and they all had like little aspects of the nominated films incorporated into their outfits. Melissa McCarthy had the bunnies on her and also had the rabbit. And the fact that both of them were so great at just playing it completely straight was so goddamn funny. And of course, what the best line is what Tyree Henry says: "The subtlest of things." Of course,
Yeah, I
also when
love
Melissa
that.
McCarthy had trouble opening the envelope because the refused to take the rabbit puppet off her hand.
I love Melissa
I
McCarthy so
mean, oh
much.
my god, that is peak perfect, no notes. That worked brilliantly. And I can still just watch that. And then you also just pair with the fact that was my number five acceptance speech last week. It was Ruthie Carter's win for Black Panther. That just that just made it all the sweeter. So good on
Mm.
them for that.
Yeah,
Rob?
two comments. Melissa McCarthy has had so many moments on the Oscars and the Emmys. So she just always brings it, and she's so funny. I just love everything about her. And Tony, you and I have we're of a similar vintage because I think we both came into the Oscars around the same time. My first Oscars was the Dancing with Wolves one. I think that was 1990. And when I started to realize, oh, okay, this is cool. I love films. I love watching people accept awards. What could possibly go wrong? Anyway, my number four is I'm almost embarrassed to bring this up, but I just think it's so fucking cool that in 1995, the best costume design category, speaking of costumes, was a fashion runway. And people love to make fun of it because it's so ridiculous and cringeworthy and silly. But I thought it was so well put together. It had all these crazy ass models who don't smile, who were serving you know what while they were strutting down the runway after Pierce Brosnan, I think, and maybe it was Heidi Klum, can't remember, announced that they were doing this runway. And the films nominated were Restoration, Braveheart, Sense and Sensibility, Richard III, and 12 Monkeys. And I was just like, the music was cool, the costumes were cool, the whole thing was ridiculous. Peak Oscars, peak 90s Oscars, because we know there's been a lot of interpretive dance, let's do an interpretive dance of Saving Private Ryan, ridiculous, crazy, stupid, but I love that stuff. I live for that stuff. I want more of that stuff. And that fashion show was so cool. And so that is absolutely on my top five.
My number four is actually also from the 1991 Oscars. It's Jack Palance and his acceptance speech for City Slickers. Once again, a movie I saw in the theaters, and I was like, "Ooh, yay, Curly won!" And I go back all the time because that's one of those acceptance speeches that I didn't fully understand all the nuances of exactly how filthy it was at the time. He was doing the one arm push ups, which was hysterical. And I love the sound of if you turn up the volume, you can hear Whoopi Goldberg, who was the presenter, just cackling her head off. Um, and then as I got older and started to understand certain things, I just realized how absolutely filthy and inappropriate, like so much of what he says, he said in terms of the two-armed push-ups, you can do those all night and it doesn't matter whether she's there or not. Um, and then he says it'd be a lot easier and a lot less expensive. Um,
Oh my God. The
And
90s.
once again, Whoopi in the background is just dying laughing and loving it. And of course, it fueled, Billy Crystal famously, said that that speech was like the best thing to ever happen to him as an Oscar host because it literally, uh, you know, fueled his jokes
Yeah,
for the rest of the night. Jack Palance just tried to climb the Hollywood sign, that sort of thing. I just love it. And every once in a while, when I'm in a bad mood, I put it on and it makes me smile.
good to
Ryan,
know.
number three.
My number three is I controversial because I think there are some people that I guess I've found out over the course of covering this racket is either pro or against musical performances on the telecast. And
Mm.
usually when people are like, cut the time, get rid of the musical performances, I'm like, why don't you get out of here, you crazy son of a
You're not my
bitch?
people.
You're not my people. So there's been a lot of great musical performances, I think, recently. Um, but I mean, I had a runner up here, and it was the performance for Once. I thought that was like a really great one. And then
Yeah.
the whole, fuck up and Jon Stewart getting her out there and getting her to speak. But if I'm being honest myself, and I'm being honest because I'm here with my great friend Charlie Bright, be lying if I didn't say when I was a kid and I couldn't see this film in theaters because my mom wouldn't let me. But I got to see this musical performance, and I thought it was the greatest thing I'd ever seen because Robin Williams was the funniest person on the planet. And that, of course, is Blame Canada from South Park, Bigger, Longer, and Uncut, which is one of the great songs ever nominated at the Academy Awards. And fucking Phil Collins won, and then they did a whole episode on it on South Park. And years later, I finally got to see it. It's fucking hilarious. But Williams, who already has his own great moment with his Oscar speech and getting to hug Billy Crystal, like if that doesn't get you to like cry in the moment, I don't know what does. Those two friends having that moment. I think they really cements himself as like, why didn't you ever host this event? Because this felt like an audition to do that. And the whole story of Parker and Stone just being on acid at the whole place and not knowing exactly where they are. Uh, them finding out that and were approved of Williams doing it because he loved the film so much, and the whole just production of it all is one of the funniest things. And it doesn't really have like, I think only until recently the Academy finally put it on their platform with decent quality, because it was like you had to watch it on YouTube on somebody's like VHS recorded version of it. It looked like it was like the Heartbreak Kid of fucking Oscar clips, and and like nobody can find it.
That's a deep cut for people.
It is it's a great film that we watched last year from Elaine May on Director Watch over at awardswatch.com. And I had to watch that movie like that, and it was reminding me of like, oh my God, like you had to like find this video, and it was like you found the Ark of the Covenant. And but Williams is insane in it. The song's a classic, should have won. Very rare that you get to see comedic songs nominated. I think like a performance like this walks so that you could get I'm Just Kid on the Oscars. So yeah, blame Canada, Robin Williams.
Charlie?
My number three is also a musical performance, and it was the Not To performance from RRR.
Oh, very
That
cool.
was one where I knew it was going to be a good performance, but I was wondering, would it really capture the absolute fucking insanity of that movie? And boy, did this deliver. It really, I mean, that was, it captured the same energy as it, and you could tell the room was fucking loving it. It was, it's just one of the, I can't even, I don't know what the fuck they're saying in that other than not to, but I was thoroughly entertained. And hopefully it got more people to go and watch that movie and see just how gloriously insane SS Rajamouli is.
My
Yeah,
favorite movie of that year was
it
RRR.
was. Yeah.
Rob, number three.
Yeah. Natu Natu, I feel like Jai Ho had to walk for Natu Natu to run. Like that's how I love both of those. And that they're actually on my list. I totally, totally agree with you. And Ryan, that year that Blame Canada was performed was to me like one of the best Oscars ever. That was 1999, I think.
Yeah.
Not only the
Yes, it
best
was.
year for film, in my opinion, but that was the hip Oscars because it was produced by Burt Bacharach and Don Was and Rob Schrock, and it had like that techno pop sound. It was it's like go back and let's watch that ceremony
More
again.
It
That
was a
wub
was
great
wub.
night.
more
Yeah.
Wub Wub for me. It was a great night. But anyway, my number three, bit more serious note, but also I was super, super proud of the Academy for awarding The Zone of Interest Best Sound and then Best International Feature, which we expected in 2023. And Jonathan Glazer, he received a lot of praise, but also a lot of criticism for his acceptance speech, calling for an end to Israel's bombardment of Gaza. And, he said that he and his fellow producer, James Wilson, stand here as men who refute their Jewishness and the Holocaust being hijacked by an occupation. And that quote was kind of misquoted and taken out of context, and he received a lot of backlash for that. But he also received a lot of support by a lot of his fellow Jewish artists. And it was a real moment for me where I just really sat up and was like, not only was that my number one film of the year, so I was very happy, selfishly, because I was just happy to see my favorite film win, but also it was an important moment where once again we are reminded that the Oscars mean something to many, many people. And it is such a great way of encapsulating where we were as a society, I think. Maybe I'm being hyperbolic. I don't think I am. Where we were as a society artistically and maybe even socio-politically at that point in time. And I've seen that moment many times. Not only that, but also Johnny Byrne winning for sound. Huge achievement for a quiet film. And so, yeah, that's my number three.
My number three is overlap. My number three is the win for Parasite. I probably watch that win at least once a week, if not more, because I don't know why my ears work this way, but I love to hear the roar of certain wins. There's something where it just goes to another level, where it goes to 11. Um, and that was something I had never seen. And I love to go back and look at the faces of different people in the audience, of like Kathy Bates just constantly going, "Oh my God, oh my God." Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio shaking hands with the cast of Parasite as they're going up there. The entire crowd telling them to bring the lights back up. It's just perfection. And I have nothing else I can add to that. Ryan, you're number two.
This is really tough because I have like three and I only have two spots. I really hate you guys so much, even though
Do an
I love
honorable
you guys.
mention. You're allowed to do an honorable mention.
I'll have an honorable mention. Oh man, this is tough. Okay, I'm gonna go with the ones I watch a little bit more because the one that I will have as the honorable mention hurts me in my soul. So a really good Oscar monologue can just be something that you remember through and through. I think we all. I mean, I grew up with Billy Crystal and seeing Whoopi, and I think that Chris Rock's had some good ones, and and so has Jon Stewart for in my era. And I don't give a shit what people think. I actually thought the McFarlane one was kind of funny at the time,
Mhm.
but I think the best monologue I've ever seen in my life was Hugh Jackman's opening monologue in his melody, and I think what's what everyone has or tried to do and has failed. There's like it's maybe it's like the hosting job the rest of the night's like fine. But what Jackman does in kind of doing the melody of songs and doing it on the strike and on the budget and everything is so much fun the moment with like the Benjamin Button heads and like the little baby and everything, and building the Batmobile and doing the techno the reader. I even went down to the theater. Like the whole thing is, it's memorable, damn it, and it gets catchy in your head. And
So good.
listen, he's had a lot of mistakes for me personally in his career since, like not letting go of Wolverine and being best friends with Ryan Reynolds. But
And the
uh,
son.
and the son, yes, but he'll always slightly get a pass because he had the greatest monologue ever. And yeah, it's so rewatchable. Like and that's how Anne Hathaway got her Oscar because because that's how they both got
He
cast in
got her
Les
to
Mis
sing.
because he
Yeah.
got her to sing playing Nixon, which is great. And then what oh God, what is his name again? Is Tom Hooper, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I tried to forget him because of Cats.
Mm.
But he saw them up on the stage, loved them both, and then cast them in Les Mis, and that's how she got her Oscar. So
Okay.
it's a great moment. It's a great moment that also carries on in careers and stuff. So yeah, how can you not love it?
I tr-
Love it.
I tried to forget Tom Hooper for the King's Speech.
How dare
Um,
you? I take
What about the
umbrage.
Charlie,
Danish girl, which is probably the worst one of them
uh,
all? Honestly, you know.
go ahead,
My
Charlie.
answer.
So my number two goes back to an honorary award recipient. And it's not even the person winning, it is the presentation. Now, normally someone will come out and they'll be like, film is such a wonderful thing, and this person's been such a magnificent part of it for so many years. But what can be really special is when you truly capture a definitive part of a person's career in your presentation of the honorary Oscar. And for me, no one did this better than Meryl Streep and Lily Tomlin when they presented the honorary Oscar to Robert Altman. The way they intricately put together this, what I guess what 2 minutes of them going on, and they are overlapping each other, saluting Altman's brilliant use of overlapping dialogue. The way they and when you realize it's one thing when they start, but then when you realize that it's a bit they're doing, also celebrating Altman, I mean, it's just it shows that these are queens at what they do. There's nobody, and you just want them to keep doing. You just wanted them to keep doing it for like 5 or 10 minutes more. But of course, they eventually have to give the award to Robert Altman, who's one of my favorite directors. But that moment was such a beautiful and hysterical tribute to a true master of cinema. And if he couldn't get one for one specific film, I'm glad that he got something that recognized the totality of his work because it is an
Mm.
incredible field of work that he put out there.
Yeah, that's for
Rob?
sure. So my number two is a tie because it's thematic, and that is, as Ryan mentioned, the opening monologues. We all look forward to them. Many of us grew up in the era of Billy Crystal and Whoopi Goldberg, particularly, and so the tie for me is when Billy Crystal came out as Hannibal Lecter. He was rolled out. Oh my God, I'm just laughing just thinking about it. That was such a special Oscar for me. It was one of my first. Silence of the Lambs has been my favorite film for most of my life until quite recently when it's just become number two. And we won't go into what number one is because I don't want to upset Charlie. And and so I love that. But I also love Whoopi Goldberg's first time as host in 1993, it was, where Billy Crystal was taking a break. So she came out, and it was a lot of people were like, "What's she going to do?" She's usually really rude, and she swears a lot, and she's a bit spicy in the things that she says. And she was so good. She acknowledged the diverse, international, and social issue-focused themes of the night. Schindler's List was nominated. She called the Oscars a global multiplex, well ahead of her time, because that's precisely what it is these days. And then she was like, let's talk about, save the whales, save the spotted owls, gay rights, women's rights, feed the homeless. And she just had ribbons everywhere. And I thought that she just did such an amazing job. She really held that whole night together. But that moment of her coming out for the first time and just really just owning the Oscars. And then after that, she became quite a staple. So love Oscar hosts. Most of them have done a great job. But that one in particular really, really, really impressed me.
And for opera fans, she came out to the triumphal march
said it was a tie,
from Act. Yeah.
What?
You said it was a tie, Rob. So
Yeah,
what was your
so
other...
that was Billy Crystal coming out as Hannibal Lecter.
Oh, that's right. Okay, I'm sorry. I forgot to mention that. Yeah.
Just, you never listen to me, Charlie. No.
It's okay. He doesn't listen to me either.
What?
Oh, see? See?
See, and we're missing the fact.
Charlie, I'm still here. Charlie.
None of y'all.
See, it's nothing. I can't get through.
None of you all. See, you all hate opera too, because the point I was trying to make was that she walked out to the triumphal march from Verdi's Aida, from Act 2 of Aida. Anyway.
Wow.
I don't hate opera. I loathe it.
Oh, well,
and ballet.
And ballet, don't even get me started on it.
Oh, well, you should
I really
be
don't like curling either, but that's a whole other story.
I'm kidding, Tony. I love it.
I know, it's okay. If you hate it, it's okay. My number 2 is needs just a very tiny bit of setup. My dad got me a VHS tape in the 90s called Oscar's Greatest Moments. It was hosted by Carl Malden, who was president of the Academy at the time.
I have that tape.
I've seen that.
Yeah.
It's great.
And I remember there's a part in there where they go through like 20 years of Best Actor and Best Actress. And during the Best Actress, we get to 1985 and F. Murray Abraham opening the envelope and saying, I consider this woman the greatest actress in the English language. The winner is Geraldine Page in The Trip to Bountiful. Now, it was many years after that where I finally, thank you to the Oscars YouTube page, where Geraldine Page's win for The Trip to Bountiful was actually posted. At this point, I had seen the film and had declared my undying love for all things Geraldine Page and agreed with F. Murray Abraham that she is the greatest actress in the history of the English language. And that win never gets tired. First of all, nerd, it was the very first standing ovation for a Best Actress winner. And she took forever to find her shoes because she forgot to put her shoes on. She'd taken her shoes off prior to the presentation of the category. It took her forever to get her shoes on. And then when she finally did, she gets this prolonged standing ovation that just keeps going and going and going, and then proceeds to give the most down-to-earth, very humble, casual speech. And I was like, oh my God, I love you. And it's still to this day just makes me smile. So there you go. Ryan, you're number 1.
All right, number 1. Well, it's very fitting that one of my favorite directors won the Oscar this past weekend. So we can kind of tie it all together. Because when my favorite directors win an Oscar, it'll make you feel something. And I felt a lot when PTA won, because it was like, this is a guy that for 30 years has made movies that I've absolutely loved. I wouldn't be in this. It's cliche to say it, but I wouldn't be as big of a cinephile and a critic and journalist and all this stuff if I didn't see his films at such a young age and it make an impression on me. And Charlie's right, like that the Altman honorary speech is great, and see Altman get his flowers. But I'm going with another sort of overdue win that to me is one of the greatest wins ever. And I hate when the Oscars force things to happen, when like they did a couple years ago when they had the Chadwick moment and it backfired and went Anthony Hopkins. It could be really bad, but when it works out, man, it can be great. And so I think back to, I guess the ceremony, it was in '07, but the films are of '06. And you see George Lucas and Francis Ford Coppola and Steven Spielberg. They walk up on the stage and they're there to present Best Director. And you're praying to God that this goes right this time. And they're having this playful banter. It's better to, it's like I've won. Francis said I've won an Oscar, and and Spielberg's like I've won one, and George Lucas is like, well, I haven't won one, and then he goes like it's better to give than receive, and Coppola and Spielberg go, no, it's not. And
Yeah.
then they go to the nominees, and it's everybody in the category, and Spielberg has the envelope, and he tells them to spread out, and he opens it up, and it's for Scorsese, and it's finally Martin Scorsese's win for The Departed. Now I'm like, The Departed's a good film. It's not a great film in Scorsese's canon, for me at least, but it's like if he was going to win for one, that's kind of feels like the right one to kind of win for. And to have his friends that have been in the industry with him and been successful and made, I mean, one of them's made the biggest franchise of all time. The other one's, neck and neck with him as the greatest director of all time. And then Coppola's made maybe the greatest film of all time with The Godfather. You know what I mean? So we're talking about four guys here that shaped American cinema and global cinema at the least. And they've been friends for 40 years at that point, or 37 years at that point, but 40 years total and more now. And to see Scorsese grab the Oscar and look at his friends and say, "Can someone check the envelope, please?" It's it's a perfect moment. It's also one of those, like we talked about it with Parasite, where it felt like everybody in the room was so happy that this happened. And
Clint Eastwood smiled.
Clint Eastwood smiled. Everybody was up on their feet. And I hadn't seen that since probably Director Bong one, I'd seen that kind of like love in the room, genuine appreciation for the award. That goes a long goddamn way. I think I kind of saw it with Nolan and a little bit with PTA this past weekend of this, just like we're getting to celebrate kind of giants here. It's not like, Michelle Hashanavicius. It's like a pretty big deal kind of person, not to be mean to the guy that made The Artist, but like, he's not gone on to make.
Please do.
Yeah. Oh, okay. You're welcome. But anyway, there's something about going back and Scorsese and just that whole moment is just fantastic. And then it ties into, Tony and Rob, what you were talking about with Parasite. And I think back to Director Bong quoting Marty and Marty getting that standing ovation. And when you watch the documentary series that's on Apple, Mr. Scorsese, you talk about like he kind of wanted it by a certain point. Like he's like, what the fuck's going on? Like this is just getting ridiculous a little bit, And he kind of hyped him. They hyped him up with The Aviator. And they thought that like like in the doc, he's like, everybody won but me. And so then the next one was his, and it's such a great moment, and it's also just like kind of what the Oscars is all about. It's like, yeah, we fucked up a lot, and we're gonna get you before and celebrate the people that paved the way for everybody else, and and plus it was just so cool to see like these old friends, these guys that changed cinema in the '70s. Up there as like the kings of the world, and they all got to walk away that night with their friend finally being a winner. So it's so great.
Charlie, number one.
Honorable mentions. I do have to that Parasite win for Best Picture. Like
Yeah,
you said,
it's
Tony,
pretty
the
great.
roar of the crowd when that happened. I remember, and also I don't just love going back and watching that. I love going back and watching Oscar parties where people are reacting to it, because that's what I mean when it was this cultural moment for us, that we all got to share and take pleasure in. Of course, I have to shout out uh, the Blame Canada performance. I also want to shout out any time that they've done musical selections from the five nominated scores. Anytime
Yes.
they do that is fantastic. I especially loved the '05 one with Itzhak Perlman, and you had Memoirs of a Geisha, Munich, Pride and Prejudice, The Constant Gardener, and Brokeback Mountain.
Beautiful.
Beautifully played and put together. But my number one, I can't help it. I've watched this over and over again, analyzing every moment of it like it's the goddamn Zapruder film, and it's the Best Picture mix-up of 2016.
This
I
was my
keep
honorable mention, Charlie.
I
Envelope
keep going
gate.
back to that because it's so interesting to watch it, and it's one of those things. It's like the moment in Benjamin Button when the car accident happens and Kate Blanchett breaks her leg or something, and it shows
Mm-hmm.
every little thing that happens that leads up to it, and you realize that everything just had to go a certain way, and this gargantuan fuck up happens. But it
Yeah.
is also fun to watch as especially when you see Mark Platt up there and he's giving his speech, and slowly
Oh,
that's when everything goes down, and you
And
see
you're
it's
like,
like a ripple effect. You see it as it slowly hits everyone
in
behind him. What's
slow-mo.
happened? You see Emma Stone going, "Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god." Ryan Gosling is on the side, and he's holding back laughter like he's
he's like
just taken an
laughing his
edible
ass
and it's
off. Yeah.
in. Yeah, and poor Mark Platt, he gets done with his speech and he motions to Fred Berger, and Berger at first goes like, "I don't
But
want to do this," and
then he makes the speech,
and then he
and
says
then
the infamous words, "We lost, by the
off by
way,"
the way.
which
And we're like,
I
what?
like. Jesus Christ, what the? I remember I was typing. Part of my piece on the best acceptance speeches of the night, and hearing that and going, "What?" Because I was
We lost,
It's
by the
it's just
way.
it,
Yeah.
I you feel bad for Moonlight, you feel bad for La La Land because it happened, but it is as much as I feel bad for them for that moment, it is one of the greatest moments of live television that has ever happened,
The
and
photo, the
the
Charlie, the
yeah,
photo of
the
everybody in
photo
the
in the audience
audience.
of everybody like Meryl Streep, and the best is The Rock, because The
The
Rock, because
Rock.
Dwayne
Yeah.
Johnson is making that infamous rock face with the one raised eyebrow, like he's like, huh? What happened?
Yeah.
I'm just like that is one of the greatest. It's just such an epic moment. I can't help but love that moment as a piece of live television, and I absolutely think it's hilarious, and just absolute insanity.
And sorry, I'm going to say it. And I know people don't agree with me. I think it's Faye Dunaway's fault.
Oh, it
Yeah.
absolutely
Agreed.
is Faye Dunaway's fault.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I know my boss, Eric Anderson, will kill me for saying that, but I 1000% think Faye, and I think it's great that it's her fault because she read that envelope
Blame
knowing damn well.
Dunaway. Blame
Yeah.
Dunaway.
She
Seems that
read that
everything's
envelope
gone wrong
knowing
since
damn well
Dunaway
that
came
something was
along.
wrong. And then you know what she did? She left Warren Beatty out in the cold
Yeah,
and
she
walked off
she
that
she
Yeah.
stage.
got
She
the
was like,
hell out
fuck
of
this.
Dodge
I'm
on that
out.
one.
And then what did
She
she
got
do?
out
She
of
came
there.
back next year when they brought him back and she read the real envelope for Shape of Water. And I just remember being like, this is such a calculated move by Faye Dunaway in the best way. It's her fault because she's like, just hurry up already and read it. And then she jumps the gun and then she's gone. God, it like just from the beginning
It's
there, you're
so
just like,
great.
this is great. Like, I don't say that with malice. I say that as just like, Faye, claim that on your IMDb page. Claim that on your
Yeah.
Wikipedia page, for
Yeah.
God's sakes.
For sure.
That is on her
Yeah.
tombstone.
Yeah. I fucked up.
I screwed Warren Beatty and not in the bedroom on
And not in the
national
doorway.
television.
Yeah. Yeah.
Rob?
Okay, so some of my honorable mentions include 2002, the Oscar Family album when they brought out like all these people who had won Oscars, and they took this photo. That was amazing. What
They
an
got to do
amazing
that in
night.
2 years, right, Rob?
Well, I keep thinking, surely we're going to
Right?
get that again. So we got it for 75th. We should get it for 100. Come on. I'm
Yes.
hoping that will
Yeah.
happen. I love that moment. You guys might not realize this, but I'm actually Australian, and I know I never bring it up. And there's two moments
Fake
that
news.
really breaking. Australia has been featured at the Oscars a lot, many times, but there's two in particular that really mean a lot to me, and that's Jackie Weaver being nominated for a quintessentially Australian performance in an Australian film, Animal Kingdom, in 2010, and then also the Australian film Tana, which was nominated in international feature. It was the first and only time Australia's ever been represented in that category. That meant a hell of a lot to me as well, because I really love the Pacific Islands, and I feel like sometimes Oceania gets a bit of a short shrift, or maybe a bit of erasure. People forget that we're here. So those two moments really meant a lot to me. And um, there's this moment in 2021 for the 2020 Oscars where we were all feeling really, everyone was sad and down and scared and uncertain. The world was falling apart, and the Oscars still went ahead with the show. The show must go on, and it was the Soderbergh produced Oscars at Union Station in LA. And that the beginning of Regina King just strutting throughout Union Station to get to the stage was one of the hottest things I've ever seen. Beautiful. She's just, I mean, she blew me away. And it was that moment where I thought, you know what, maybe the whole world is not so completely fucked, and maybe we can just enjoy this moment. I don't know. It's just a really simple thing, but it really meant a lot to me. But my number one is also Envelope Gate, because I don't think, how can you not? How can that not be your moment? I think I've watched Life is a Brutal film. I think I have passed over every frame trying to work out how it happened, why it happened, and then let's just enjoy the fact that it happened. Because when he says, I think it was Jordan Horowitz, I think maybe, that said, there's a mistake, Moonlight. You guys won Best Picture. Like, what? I
And
could
of course,
believe
him
it.
throwing in, this is not a joke.
This is not a joke. And then, of course, that happened. And whether you love Moonlight or love La La Land more, who cares? I love both of them. I was happy for either film to win. But just in terms of a moment, not even just an Oscars moment, a moment in our pop culture, on a television moment. I don't think you could possibly beat it. So there you go.
Um, I have two honorable mentions. One is Envelope Gate, um, and the other is the famous 1973 Streaker,
Yeah.
and David Niven's epic response about the only laugh that man will ever get is by stripping off and showing his shortcomings. One of the greatest lines in the history of the Academy Awards. My number one is very nostalgic. It's because we've all said it several times, was that many of us grew up in the era of Billy Crystal as the Oscar host. And when he came back in
Oh, yeah.
1997, and came back in a completely different way, inserting himself in all of those clips, really set the stage for a lot of award show openings that have happened since then. But that was really the first time that that had happened that way that I can remember. Maybe it had happened before, but that was the first time it really registered for me. And the roar when he ran out, no wonder Whoopi quit, and Letterman coming down in the plane, and Uma and Oprah and all that, and just the sheer joy of that audience giving him a standing ovation. Um, I watch that all the time. I watched it this morning, just preparing for this. But uh, you know, Billy Crystal will always be my Oscar host. And I think for a lot of people, it's always going to be that way. That is our time. Thank you all so much for joining, and watching, for liking and subscribing, and for leaving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Be sure to send us your comments, your complaints, and your queries to awards. I was going to make a gay joke, but I'm not going to. To awards7@gmail.com. You can read all of Ryan's stuff at awardswatch.com, and Ryan will be back. He is not a one-time guest. Ryan, thank you so much for joining us. Everybody, have a great week, and we will see you next time on the Award 7 podcast.